time for Licking on Lending.
Welcome, everybody. Good to have you with us.
Welcome to Licking on Lending, a weekly mortgage market update providing up-to-the-minute information on interest rates, loan programs, and hot industry news, all related to the mortgage industry. Brought to you by Transformational Mortgage Solutions. To participate in today's program, our guest call-in line is 646-716-4972. Now here's your host of Licking on Lending, David Lickin.
Let's begin.
Jeffrey Palermo is our guest today. I'm really excited to have him here. He is chief architect of ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers their clients to develop teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. He is a systems guy. We're so excited to have joining me my good friend and brother from another mother, Jeffrey Palermo. Jeffrey, good to have you here.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, it's a real honor. And I think it'd be helpful to let our audience get to know you a little bit. What's a little bit about your background? What brought you to where you're at today? And what's something that's interesting about you?
Well, I was born at a very young age. And besides that, I like to race off-road motorcycles in the kind of local amateur league, and have 3 kids and beautiful wife of 20 years. Love country dancing. Did a lot of teaching and kind of was part of a performing group way back when.
Yeah.
So, and then of course I've been a computer programmer since 1997. My first job in 1997, and been loving that ever since.
Well, and you have now ClearMeasure, and that specifically does training and contract, programming. Is that correct?
Yes. I started that company 10 years ago, and it had a really fast beginning, and it was 2013. But in 2016, we received the Austin Fast 50 award. We were listed the number one fastest growing small business in 2016. And so that's, companies that are kind of startup and are the fastest growing at that time. It was hard to grow so fast. So we had some rough years after that, but no, it's been great. And we're grateful to have really long-term clients, and even having an impact across all the 50 states and even some international clients. And so we love just helping companies empower their internal software teams to be really highly effective.
I can't wait to get into that. And also, as a background, you are a Microsoft.NET centric programming shop. Is that correct?
Yes. The IT world is massive. The software world is massive. And we focus on the roughly half of the software world that uses Microsoft technologies. So our customers are going to have software engineers in-house that are using Visual Studio. And for the CFOs out there, you see a Visual Studio subscription line item when you review all the expenses. And so that's kind of the rough qualification of a client probably would find us useful, is if they're buying Visual Studio for their developers.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'd like to get more into that, but I really want to get into the topic today of artificial intelligence, AI. And let's start with getting a definition of what exactly is artificial intelligence.
Sure. I like to kind of go back and look at history when thinking about things new, because, and I invite anybody to kind of do this. Go on Wikipedia and look up the artificial intelligence page, read the definition, kind of what it says, and then look back in the history of that page and go back 10 years. And then go back 10 more years and 10 more years. And you'll see that page is constantly changing, and the dust has not settled. And I don't expect the dust to settle when we try to continually update the documentation on that. But it all goes back to 1956 at Dartmouth College. And John McCarthy, who's the father of artificial intelligence, coined the term. He did a summer workshop, got some funding, and his hypothesis, his pitch to get the funding, was that we could sufficiently identify and describe every feature of human intelligence so precisely that we then could make a machine that simulates that feature of intelligence. And if we take that and extrapolate that forward, that's happened time and time again. We've identified something that only humans could do. We've described it and we've analyzed it. And then we built a machine that could do it. And now we take for granted adaptive cruise control, talking to Siri or Alexa, voice recognition, text to speech, computer vision, image. And what we find is that once we have described something very precisely, and once we have created a machine to simulate that aspect of what was previously just human intelligence, we tend to give it a more specific name, and we tend to stop calling it artificial intelligence. We don't say, did you put on your cruise control AI in your car today? No. Right? So once we've built the machine to simulate it, we tend to stop calling it AI.
It's interesting. And we carve it out and put it into a more functional description of what it actually does. That's very interesting.
Because we've applied it.
Yeah. That's it's also interesting how long it's been around and the definition of what it would, the theory of what it was. And when you look at it, there has a lot been accomplished, but I think where people take it is where we get messed up. I mean, it's definitely under development. There's a lot going on. And November 30th, the most significant development in AI started with a new product called ChatGPT AI. And I really want to get into that. Why is that such? It seems like a leap forward. What is going on with ChatGPT and what is unique about it?
Sure. So that specifically, there's an organization called OpenAI. And what you're talking about, it's the URL chat.openai.com. And by the way, Microsoft, I think, invested $1 or $2 billion in that. And
is a little bit of investment.
Exactly. And so it's taking that full technology and has plans and is working on embedding it into Windows and Microsoft Office. So that, if anyone's played around with it, all those are going to basically be ubiquitous on desktop computers and probably phones in short order. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And it layers onto all of the advances in machine learning, whereby which you feed into a big machine learning model, a whole bunch of data that is labeled in very specific ways. And so that's the pre-training part. Then on top of that, the generative aspect, that's a huge breakthrough. We've been able to ask a question and get responses a long time with Siri and Alexa and whatnot. But generative is taking this machine learning model and actually generating what appears to be new information by being conversational, generate new paragraphs that didn't exist before. They're just not giving us back access to information. They're actually generating new text.
It's not like pointing like Google does when you put a Google, or if you use Bing or whatever the search engine you're using, and you put in a search, it doesn't bring back recommended websites. It actually goes in and searches this. Now, there's one thing that you pointed out when you and I first started talking about this a few weeks back. And again, all of this is so new. I mean, November 30th, it's skyrocketing in what is the adoption of this thing and the people playing around in it. But you pointed out they took all the data in the internet, dumped it into ChatGPT or OpenAI. They dumped it in there up to and through 2021. That means we're limited moving forward with everything that's been developed or added to the internet since that point, right?
That is correct. Now, specifically, a lot of information has been since taken out. And
really? Okay.
I don't think anybody has the full information, but some of the reports from the early testing of this showed that it gave responses that they didn't want it to. They didn't want it to give. Some of the responses were reported to be just vile and toxic. And what they realized was, oh shoot, you're right. We can't put in all of the available knowledge of the world into this because there's
some really bad stuff out.
Yeah, there's really bad information out there. If we think of all of the books on the planet, you think, oh, books are good, right? But there's a lot of filthy pornographic novels out there. Mm-hmm. And so do you want examples of writings to be that type of writing when people are getting, help with how to describe things? There was a write-up of the process. There was a massive project that happened to actually censor and edit the information that went into this. And there were some contractors that hired a lot of people, and there were reports of the mental problems that all of these employees went through. Because think about it, if your job is to look at really bad content and label it as bad, and that's your job, you're actually ingesting and you're focusing on the worst of the worst that's out there to be looked at. So this information has been highly censored because of that. And so they've chosen what they want to be in this model.
Really important. Yeah. Thankfully they did that. That's the last thing my eyes want to see or read is something that is just foul and distasteful. And I know that is on a spectrum, or what's like what one said, one man's pornography is another man's art. I mean, so we understand that there is something. So how they navigate that, it is what it is. And now we're using the tool with a lot of that really bad stuff out of there. And I think that's a whole nother topic, what that did and what that caused and why. But I want to get into. Yeah, go ahead.
It's important to notice that this is the architecture of this type of system, that a person has to choose what data to put into this model and has to choose how to label that data. Okay. So by nature, these types of systems will always be biased just by the nature of the architecture, because there is that choice. So just as long as that's just the design, it's not good or bad, it just is. And so this is a general purpose one that these organizations are building, but more and more people will be building their own, and they will choose what data to put in and how to label the data that is put in. And you'll have specialized models.
Yeah. I think that's really starts getting into some of the application, the power of what this could be. We're already seeing this with Amazon Alexa, and it's called artificial intelligence. That came out 10 years ago. So tie ChatGPT and Alexa and kind of give us a trajectory of where we're going to be heading.
I mean, Microsoft has already announced that it's going to be on the desktop. It's going to be in Microsoft Word.
And when you say it's going to be in Microsoft Word, any insights into how that's going to be in there? Can you give us some? I know it's not, you're not behind the veil, so you can't understand exactly how they do it, but I'm sure based on what you've read, there's some anticipation of what could be there. Can you give us some examples?
Well, Microsoft Word is used to make documents. So ChatGPT, the chat application on top of GPT-3 and the experimental GPT-4 is already demonstrating that
extraordinary.
It can write paragraphs, it can write outlines, it can write computer code. So Microsoft Word is a natural extension where you jam out an outline for a document in Microsoft Word. Maybe you put some bullet points of the points that you want to make in every section of your outline, and then you hit a button that says go, and Microsoft Word just fills out the prose with good grammar to basically make a document of your points. And then you kind of look at, make sure you're happy with it. I mean, that is a very small step to make that possible from what we're already seen demonstrated.
Yeah, which really brings up kind of the factor of AI risk. I mean, is this a risk in education? Do we have to reevaluate what we're doing in education? We've already heard about how college kids, surprise, surprise, looking to make it easier, are using ChatGPT to write their papers, and the universities are trying to stop it. And they're going, well, should we be stopping this? How should we be viewing this? Love to get your thoughts on the risks and versus asset that we have here with this ChatGPT.
Well, it makes me think about history again, because if we know history, then we can know what to expect. If we don't know history, then we think that everything about this is new and novel, and then we are either fearful for it, or we're saying, oh, this is new, this changes everything. And so there's been huge inventions that have come along the way that have changed paradigms, and some people have resisted it and some people embraced it. Different jobs were eliminated, new jobs were created. I mean, there were companies that used to create horse whips, and all those companies, most of them are out of business because buggies are not drawn by horses anymore. We have automobiles, and so we don't necessarily need as many of those now. But I learned to type on an electric typewriter in the 7th grade, and at the time,
I'm so old I learned on a manual, but that's all right. We won't get into that.
I have a manual at home. My kids know what it is to type on a manual and to try to unstick those keys.
That's exactly right. I have the one there where the letters come up. It's an old Underwood, but it's like a collector's item. But I have that in a selectric typewriter, and I have my first IBM PC with the dual floppies in there. So it's like I'm developing a museum of all this technology and how things work. So,
well, there's another piece of history for you. If you ever look down at your keyboard, and you may think you might have heard, there was a scientific study on the best and most productive keyboard layout so that we could type the best, and some expert came up with it, and it was like, no, this keyboard layout is like it was so that the manual typewriters would not get jammed as frequently based on common words. It was just because of the manual typewriter design. That's the only reason that our QWERTY keyboard is as it is now. And now that we don't have manual typewriters anymore, there's literally no reason for it. It just sticks.
Other than we're programmed that way now. So
we're programmed that way.
Yeah, it'll stay. Don't read.
Don't mess with it. To get back to your question about where I think it's going. Yes, students are pushing the boundary. Yeah, I mean, people push the boundaries and use it. Back in math class, back in the day, it was don't use a calculator. Well, now kids in math class, the teachers just say, use the calculator, because they realize, if you don't know this type of algebra, the calculator ain't going to help you. And so it's a tool, and people are going to use it. And we have to realize that skills are going to be lost. Yes. And there's no getting around it. Back in the day, there were TV dinners, and now there's massive amounts of prepared food. Mm-hmm. How many people today do not know how to bake bread? Mm-hmm. That used to be a skill that literally every human on the planet knew how to do. Exactly. And now I think a minority of the people, at least here in the country, I bet know how to bake bread. And what about handwriting and penmanship in the age of tapping and typing? How many people? Well, my children, I had to put them in a specific class so that they would learn cursive handwriting, because it's no longer taught in so many schools. And penmanship in general is not actually taught in any formal way. So will we lose skills? Will we lose the skill to draft entire paragraphs because we just go to outlining and bullet pointing and then let the computer fill in the rest? It will probably happen. It's anybody's guess, but every time technology comes around, skills are lost. And then, of course, we lament, man, if this machine ever broke, who would ever know how to do it? For example, if all the computers, broke, would anyone know how to create a silicone chip again from scratch? Does anyone know how to build for themselves an internal combustion engine? No, we kind of get it from a handful of companies.
Yeah. You raise a really good point, because I think when we look at what we've lost in technology, I mean, cursive writing, I love journaling. I'm a journaler, and I journal in cursive. I'm 72 years old, so I'm learned how to, that's how we learn to write.
Sure.
And what there is a real interesting brain science, just a little detour on this, is that power of what happens when you write and journal with cursive versus just printing out the letters in a printed format. Your brain connects and flows better. It's just really interesting. So I think I also saw a hilarious poster. It shows original technology, and they held up a pen and they go, printer and delete button, as they held up and pointed to the one end of the pencil to the other end. Original technology. I think when we look at the risks involved in this, so we've talked about educational risk, but again, how are we starting to deploy this where it is truly an asset? And we may, forget, metaphorically, how to make the bread. We're going to forget some other skills in this effort as we move through and forward into this. But what are some of the things you anticipate we're going to benefit as a society, as in commerce or whatever else, from ChatGPT and the development of AI?
Oh, I am really looking forward to further decentralization of control and decentralization of information. I mean, we've been on this trend, and technology has been a huge empowering force for so many other people that would not have been able to either create something or get a message out or any type of work. So I'm really exciting that this furthers the decentralization of our society so much more, because the trend, go back several decades. If you wanted to publish something, you had to have a connection with somebody with a printing press. And then even in the digital age, you still had massive media companies where you had to convince one of them to run something because they controlled distribution. Whereas now we've seen with the various social media, yeah, you can publish something and it can be totally ignored, and most things are totally ignored, but there's no dozen or small number of dozen people that just decide whether something is going to be looked at or not looked at. And that's where the concept of going viral, and that's where the massive pushback has happened over the last couple of years, because it started with political and then it went with vaccine things, where social media companies did actually try to put in place some re-centralizing censorship. And the populace absolutely fought back and rejected it and called it out. And so, Elon Musk take over of Twitter. Yeah. He's like, yep, it's killing the company. We're not, and he totally rolled back that initiative, because once the people have tasted more freedom, they rebel against going back to previous control.
That's really good. So you're seeing this contribute to a decentralization of data, knowledge, repositories, and all this, and it's going to start putting it, redistribute it, decentralize it, put it out in the hands of more and more people. But it's still accessing the same database, or it's accessing centralized databases. So is it a veneer or an illusion that we're decentralizing because we're still looking at centralized databases, or how would you respond to that?
Well, it depends on which, if we're specifically talking about GPTs, whose implementation you're using. Because whoever's implementation you're using, that's the database that you're using. And so the research experimentation one that's put up by OpenAI, theirs is a database. Google is and they've launched for closed preview their Bard GPT style AI. And so certainly you have to know whose database it is and know what you can trust it for. I predict, this is my own prediction, that more and more companies are going to train their own model. And again, that's choosing the data that you put in and choosing how to label the data that you put in. And so,
it sounds like an arduous process to be able to get that in. Yeah. It's just got to be huge. So is this being a game changer only for the biggest of companies?
No. Okay. So companies like ServiceNow, Freshdesk, Zoho Desk, all the help desk ticketing companies that have integrated knowledge bases. Imagine this. You've got Microsoft, which Microsoft and Google and those types of companies, they create infrastructure level technology. It's not specific enough to be, but it's general technology. And Microsoft is really good about creating development tools on top of their technologies. So I predict all of these help desk companies, as one example, extending their knowledge base searches and their ticketing and chatbots and whatnot, so that the information that's put into a company's knowledge base can be labeled in a certain way, then fed into a specific data model that uses the GPT technology so that a particular company's chatbot or even the agents that are using search or the self-service search, you can conversationally talk to the knowledge base, tell it what your problem is, and then it will intelligently, with your specific data, tell you how to fix your washer and dryer or whatever it happens to be. And then if they ask something specifically, well, it's not on, it's not plugged in. Well, it is plugged in, but it's still not on. Then Microsoft's database under the covers comes in because now we're in more general data, as in go check your breaker, or did you have a lightning strike? Are there any other lights off in your house? This is beyond fixing a washer dryer. It's not in our knowledge base, but it goes to the more general thing. So I expect it's just going to happen because it's too obvious of a use case.
Yeah, I can understand it. So how is GPT different from what we've previously called AI? This is new. How is it different?
Yeah, everything new is called AI, and then once we make a concrete application for it,
we strip it out and call it something else.
Okay, exactly. Machine learning has had a really good decade, and I think in 2005 to 2010, it was talked about as, not that it's totally new, but as far as building up and creating things based on creating these models. Whereas one of the applications that's very common now is sentiment detection, where you can feed in some text and it will basically guess what emotion, whether you're happy or sad or whether you're angry or any kind of emotional scale, which is really important for customer service departments.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been wondering why social media companies or even blog engines haven't integrated this so that marketers, wouldn't you want to know the tone and the general emotion rating of articles or tweets or LinkedIn posts that you're putting out, just as a quality control,
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a really good point.
And there's so many companies out that are generating HD movies with AI models. They're generating images. They are doing really, really smart video transcriptions.
Really?
So yeah, there's so many applications now where it's all an aspect of AI. In other words, it is a feature of human intelligence that someone has had to describe very precisely, and then they build a machine to do it. So while it's a pipe dream, we call it AI because we're not quite sure how to better describe it, because it's like, man, it requires some intelligence to do this. Once we've described it, well, now we have so many other terms to choose from, we often choose a more specific term.
Interesting. One of the big concerns I think people have, especially that are in a function where they're providing information, is that this is going to eliminate jobs. Speak to what is the potential of AI doing that?
Well, of course it will. But every single technology has eliminated some jobs.
Yeah, you and I were on a webinar yesterday with Finastra doing this, and it was you or one of the other panelists brought up how that we have now gone to robotics. The men used to gals would put on bumpers on a car. Now we have a robot that totally does all of that process automatically. Does that mean that job went away? Well, that specific job went away, but they repurposed that, hopefully, into other things. So are we going to see a revolution of a major, is it the word revolution the right word? Jeffrey, I'm trying to find the right word. Are we going to have a major shift away from the jobs that are being done right now by humans? And how adaptive do humans have to be as we start looking at the world that's before us?
I think there's probably going to be a trend. There's probably going to be an early wave of, let me give an example. If I wanted to get a job as a marketing content writer, Because I've gone to all kinds of websites that have all kinds of information about this and that, and I read the article, and they're not too compelling, if I'm being honest. But there's a lot of content writers out there, and the current technology is kind of really good. You can tell it, write me a 500 word article about this, and this, and give it a few bullet points, and it jams out the whole thing. So if I wanted to get a job doing that, and then I just use this tool to generate tons and tons of copy, okay, I can do it. But that's not quality work. That's just quantity. So I think that there's going to be a huge wave of people don't understand the difference. They don't understand the value in quality, and they use it to just generate a whole heaping pile of quantity. And I think that that Google and Microsoft with their Bing search engine, they're going to have to figure out how to wade between a internet that is a certain size and an internet that quickly becomes 100 times the size by generated content. And the job of these search engines is to index all of this content to figure out what to return in the search. And now you have content, it's basically meta content. It's content that's generated based on other content. It's low quality. Now, if all you need is look up specific information, that's fine. But what we like to read magazine articles about is not just information lookup. We want unique insights.
Yeah, it's critical thought. Yeah, the critical thought that goes into a really good writer. I'm thinking so many of my very favorite writers. Yes. Yeah, the words they use and how they phrase it. If they're a good writer, that you can see how they phrased it and brought that data together. But at the end of the day, I'm wanting to know what he's thinking, how he's thinking about something. I can benefit from it. So that is where, at least at this level of ChatGPT AI, we're probably not going to get that. That's where that individual is still going to be hugely necessary. Like you were saying, if they're just turning out content, a factory of just turning the lever and spitting out articles, then that's another level, a lower level.
I will give you an example. We at ClearMeasure, every engineer and architect that we hire, we have an audition step in the interviewing process. Just like if you're going to hire a master juggler or an opera singer, you're going to say, okay, juggle for me or sing for me. You're not just going to talk on the other side of the desk about doing it. You're going to say, show me, let me watch you do what you're good at, right? So we have an audition step, just like I think every good interview process should have, the show me step. And it's not a hard programming problem. Anybody qualified to work at ClearMeasure is going to sail through it because we only have 30 minutes anyway. And already we've had a good number and a growing number of people who we tell them, hey, use whatever tool, do what you normally do. It doesn't matter. Just do it. And we're going to observe you as you do it. Google searches have always been common in programming. Oh, I can't remember this. Let me look it up. We've had a growing number that literally have gone to ChatGPT and had it generate some of the code, and they copy and paste the code.
Wow.
And there's been, a growing number of people who do that, and it doesn't actually change the interview process one bit. It doesn't hamper, hurt, or make it any more difficult for us to hone in on our assessment of the skills of the candidate and make the same assessments of who to continue down the process or not. So yes, it's a change, but it's just a change.
That's interesting. So you don't anticipate it's going to eliminate some jobs, but create jobs in another area. So it's a shifting of the workforce.
Yeah. And I really do think about that. It's every other big, important technology. It's a huge shift. Yeah. It's a shift. Yes. Some people are going to have things that are supplanted, and then 10 years later, we're going to bring them back. Just like putting a PC on everybody's desk or a word processor on every manager's desk costs a lot of CFOs in the in the 80s to say, wait a minute, we have an army of secretaries that are costing our company a lot of money, but all they're doing is dictating documents. We're going to give these computers, now the managers can type their own memos. We don't need these secretaries, and that's going to save us a lot of money. So let's sweep away all these secretaries. And I know this example because my mother-in-law has a secretarial science bachelor degree, and I've learned this from her. And so now we're several decades removed from the secretary elimination wave, and executive assistants are kind of coming back as important, and a new generation of managers are learning again the importance of having an administrative style helper who is an expert in administration and in programming. So many software systems are important for describing information, cataloging information, retrieving information, making reports of information. Guess what? That stuff was taught at universities in secretarial science degree classes. And that whole bit of knowledge has gone away because the importance of it was reduced, saying, oh, we got computers, we don't need all these people now. And so guess what? A whole new generation is having to relearn what it means to properly classify information and communicate it and steward over it. But secretarial science is a real thing.
Wow. It's really fascinating. What recommendations do you have for how we can actually use the latest round of AI innovation?
Sure. Well, I'm really excited about it because it's super empowering to the people that we serve, which are software engineers and teams that build software, because this literally is a software program. And Microsoft is deploying it aggressively. Google is deploying it aggressively. They're going to be running it inside their data centers and making it available for customers. And so literally we'll be able to write programs and build software that call into it, make use of it in an already built fashion, and get it to kind of generate content for us in various fashions. And we'll be able to create our own models with specialized data that our companies currently have. And I think there's been reports of, a computer with 8 to 10 GPUs being able to build a model in just maybe a few weeks. That's not a lot of computing horsepower. So we're far away from the supercomputer. You have to have several rooms of computers in order to crunch this data. It's very affordable. And we'll be able to combine other forms of automation that used to be called AI to access Microsoft's wealth of cataloged information and then this generative pre-trained transformer technology, and combine it with other types of automations to create new inventive products across a whole wide range of industries. I'm just thinking of the wealth of past information combined with processing real-time data that's relevant for a particular company. And then the comparing of the two allows us to create better decisions on the fly and be quicker in response.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so let's go to wrapping it up.
Okay.
I mean, this is one of those topics I could go on and on and on about. There's so many, it's just fascinating to listen to it. But I think I want now is what can we get into, Jeffrey, to talk about that will draw people to you and want to pick up the phone? What content, what question can I ask and that'll invoke a response from you that will want to have people call you? What's the best way?
Well, we've already gotten some of the questions. Is my software team going to become obsolete?
Yeah, that's good. Let's go there. Let's go there right now, and then we'll see if there's anything else after that. So, one of the questions, I mean, we're talking about what we're talking about is some jobs are going to be eliminated. And so one of the questions I think a lot of people are looking is my job at risk? Now, you're a program company. You develop code for companies. Is this going to get to the point? You already talked about how it can write code. Is this going to wipe out all the jobs for those that are writing code today?
Yeah, so every new technology is going to eliminate some types of jobs. If like we have robotic arms that can put bumpers on a car now, so fewer and fewer car manufacturers need the people to do every single step of that process. But you still need people to do some steps. Now, it's interesting that this particular new AI tool, it is software in and of itself, and it has to be integrated. And so
Interesting.
I think that this is going to create yet another type of programmer specialty or yet another task for software engineers to do. So I think it's actually going to expand the number of programming jobs, not decrease it. Yes, it can. We think, yes, it can write code, but it's not actually writing code. It's taking code repositories that are known out there and it's piecing parts together to give code samples, and it can do some things that look pretty darn interesting. But I have not seen it actually build a software system that a person would have done. And so we've always done internet searches and, oh, how do I write this particular code? Okay, let me look it up. Let me use it. Great. Now I need to get down the road. But that's just using it as a tool. So I predict it's going to be a tool for programmers, not a replacement for programmers.
Okay.
But I expect its capabilities and the new types of software systems that it enables will actually further increase the need and the desire for programmers as more and more companies say, light bulb, now I can do this in my marketplace for a better competitive advantage. Let me go and build another software product. And in an industry that already has a shortage of programmers, I think the demand continues getting higher and our supply continues to struggle to keep up.
That's interesting. How can people get a hold of you, Jeffrey?
Sure. So clearmeasure.com is the website. I'm a chief architect there and the original founder. And you can also just give me a call, 512-298-2377. Email address is jeffrey@clear-measure.com. I love talking to people. Worst case scenario, we give some free advice and maybe help you along the way. Best case scenario, one of our products or services is a fit for you. But yeah, if you run a .NET software team in-house, we'd love to help you make them better.
That's good. I think it's so important to get outside advice. I'm a consultant, so it's self-serving to say that I'm outside of companies. But I think anyone who's employed you or myself in our services always realizes, you know what? We weren't seeing some of these things, and we would not have seen them had we hadn't brought you in from the outside. So I think we help identify those blind spots. And I want to say thank you so much for spending a few minutes of your day joining me here on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
You've been listening to Lykken on Lending, a weekly mortgage market update with your host, David Lykken of Transformational Mortgage Solutions. Join us next week, and thanks for listening.